everybody, welcome to my kitchen. So glad you're with us as we are gonna make some challah to get ready for Shabbat. Come join me.
Let's go over our ingredients. We'll need a packet of yeast and some sugar. We're also going to need an egg and oil. Any kind of oil will do. Don't use the expensive stuff, just standard oil. Kosher salt, table salt will work as well, but I like this thing in my home. And of course, flour. It's bread. We need flour. Put our yeast in our big metal bowl. We're going to cut that open, pour the yeast in, and add to that yeast 1/3 cup of sugar. Might be tempted to mix things up, but no worries, not necessary at all. To the yeast and sugar mixture, we're going to add, again, don't mix it, just let it sit, and we'll see what happens. Now let's set this bowl to the side as we get ready to move on to the next step in our challah baking process. Next up, we're going to need a small bowl. I've got a clear glass bowl and one beautiful egg. We're going to go ahead and crack open that egg, add it to this bowl, and then add a couple of more ingredients to make this come together. We're going to need 1/4 cup of that oil. 1/4 cup is 4 tablespoons. And then to that, we will add teaspoons of the measure I'm using is a 1/2 teaspoon. So that's 3 1/2 teaspoons. Now, no special equipment necessary. Just go ahead and grab a regular table fork and go ahead and beat together this mixture, bring out the egg yolk, incorporating the oil, and develop into a beautiful pale yellow mixture. When it all comes together, it's going to look a little bit like this. Let's check back in on our yeast mixture. It's bubbly and ready, so we're going to combine both our liquids, our yeast mixture all together, and we're ready to add flour. We're going to start with 1 cup of flour, and we're going to dump it right into the bowl. Now take a spatula or a wooden spoon, something non-metallic for this purpose, and begin to combine. We incorporate all of this flour and the liquid together, and you'll notice as I'm mixing, the batter really first gets a little lumpy and then begins to smooth out. Rotating the bowl a little bit, I'm scraping the sides such that all of that batter, all of that dry flour can get incorporated with those wet ingredients. We want a nice, even mixture of all these delicious ingredients to form the basis of our dough, which will become our bread. I'll keep stirring until I get a less batter looking a lot like a pancake batter. And the final stage of this batter is going to look like this. Now that flour is fully incorporated, we're ready to get into the nuts and bolts of this process, and that's by adding the rest of our flour. Our recipe calls for 3.5 cups total of flour. We've already added 1 cup, so you can do the math. We need to add 2.5 more cups of flour to this mixture. As we add those in, just 2.5 cups straight into the bowl, we're then going to take our wooden spoon or the silicone spatula, whatever you're using to stir, and begin to bring this dough together. Now, if you have access to or you enjoy using a food mixer, at this stage would be a really easy and convenient stage to begin to use your dough on your stand mixer, but it's really not necessary. As you'll see, I'm combine the liquid base batter with that big lump of dry flour, and I'm bringing it over. I'm looking for a moment when it begins to really form into itself a shaggy mess. It's going to get difficult to use the utensil. What I'm going to need to do now is use my hands to begin to mix this dough together. I'll get everything off the spoon as much as I can and dig my hands right into the bowl, incorporating all of that dry flour into the inner parts of the dough, pushing down, making sure that a pinch and turn technique here. And really all I'm doing is using my hands as the spoon to bring this mixture together. Now, it's going to be sticky. You might be tempted to add more flour. Really, there's plenty of flour in this as well, and we don't want a overly dry bread of our journey together. So once this is really now a uniform shaggy dough, I'm ready to enter the kneading process. You'll see I begin to incorporate and fold the dough back over itself, pushing my palm into it. Now, what I'm doing here is I am trying to develop the gluten strands of this dough, of this bread, so that as it rises, as it proofs over time, it will have the structure that will provide that nice, beautiful texture we have come to expect and love in our bread. You'll notice that even in this bowl, there's still a little bit of flour around the edges as it's all coming together. But the more I mix, the more it comes together. Now I've turned my dough out onto my kneading board, and I'm entering this second stage of kneading. I incorporated all of that dry flour, and I am moving this sticky ball around. Just a little bit more dry flour left in that bowl. I'm going to try and get as much as I can. It needs it. Remember, it's no extra flour, just the flour that was part of the initial recipe that has been called for. Getting everything together and pushing with both hands, one hand, developing that structure. And you'll see it's just a matter of a few minutes of kneading and manipulating this dough, which brings it together into a beautiful, tacky, sticky, and responsive dough, which is pretty much all we need in order to be able to ensure that we have a bread. I'm rolling the dough ball around the board just to make sure I'm collecting all of those spare pieces that sometimes can be stuck to the board. And at this point, I'm ready to shape and let this dough have total kneading time, about 8 to 10 minutes. But it's really as that dough comes together, you'll know it's time. Do a final shape. Let my dough rest in the middle of my board. There it is. Now I have a clean bowl, wiped out from all of that gunk and mess from our mixing. I'm going to add just really a teaspoon, a little drop of oil into the bottom of this bowl. The oil is going to serve as a coating for our dough. I'm going to put the dough in topside down, get a nice rub on it, and let it rest here. I'm going to poke it, see how responsive that dough is, just a little test to make sure it's alive and happy. I'm going to place a cloth cover over this bowl and allow it to rest in a warm place in my kitchen for the next little while. So it's been about 2.5, 3 hours, and I'm ready to check on my dough and see how we've done. I'll then cover the bowl and look to see that the dough has grown in size. It's not exactly double, The next test, though, is I'm going to poke it again. You'll see that it doesn't respond and the poke stays. That's a good sign. It means my dough is ready to move to the next step. I'll remove the dough from the bowl and turn it out onto my work surface, making sure I get all those little bits and pieces together. I want to have a lot of challah. No sense in having waste. I'll knead this dough a little bit so it comes together into a nice, consistent mass. Make sure it's happy and healthy. Stretch the skin as I'm ready to shape it. I've got one ball, but what I really need is 6 equal size pieces. Oh, look, there they are. Now, working in stages, I will take 3 of these equal size dough balls and begin to elongate them about 12 to 15 inches long, maybe more like 14 inches. You'll see I squeeze the dough, lengthening it, and then as I get it about as long as it can go, I turn it out onto the work surface and roll it with my hands, pushing towards the middle and stretching the dough so that it becomes that thin, manipulable strand we'll need for our braiding process. I'll lay those 3 strands on a sheet pan with a silicone baking mat below and begin to braid them, working from the middle of the dough out. I'll braid one side, then I'll rotate the pan around and braid from the other side. I find that this creates a more consistent and even loaf rather than if you start from one end and braid all the way down, what you end up with is often an oblong or off shape in your bread. Repeat the process. Now we've got 2 loaves ready for proofing. I'm just going to take my towel, place it over this pan, let these rest for about an hour. After an hour, we'll come back, check on our loaves, looking to see that they've bulked up a little bit as they've relaxed in over time. Now we're ready to put our egg wash on our dough. I'll clean up this loaf a little bit just so it continues to look nice. This is what we'll need for our egg wash. We'll crack the egg open, add a little bit of water, and then add about a tablespoon of honey into our little ramekin. We'll grab a small fork, mix that together. We've got our egg wash ready. Let's bring our challah back onto our prep table. Take a brush and liberally apply this egg wash to both our loaves. Now that they're fully covered, I'm going to add these black sesame seeds. You can really top your challah however you want or not top it at all. Just a way of adding contrast and color to your final loaves. Now we're going to bake them for 20 to 25 minutes in a 350-degree oven, waiting for them to turn a beautiful golden brown. Oh, look, there they are, your final loaves of challah for your Shabbat table. I hope you enjoy them. Thanks for baking along with me. Shabbat Shalom.